Go find a toilet elf. What do I care? The leprechaun shouted as he stomped down the hall and between the legs of Uncle Jake, leaving a trail of little wet footprints behind him. Puck frowned and turned back to Sabrina. Now look what you've done. You've made Seamus quit. Do you know how hard it is to find someone to sit in a toilet all night? How many more leprechauns are in the house? Daphne asked, peering behind the shower curtain. That was the only one, Puck said. Good, Sabrina said, relieved. But there's about a dozen trolls, some goblins, a few elves and brownies, and a chupacabra seeking out the other vulnerable areas of the house. Sabrina gasped. There are freaks all over the house? Again, freak is a really ugly term. It highlights how ignorant you are. This is the 21st century, you know, Puck replied. Sabrina clenched her fist. I'm going to highlight your mouth, pal. Give it your best shot, Puck shouted. Wait a minute, what's that on your lips? Sabrina quickly wiped her mouth on her sleeve, leaving a lipstick stain on her shirt. She quietly cursed herself for not washing well. Nothing, she said sheepishly. Puck, we appreciate you looking after us, Granny said, stepping between Sabrina and Puck. I know Mr. Canis would feel better knowing you are taking over his duties. I guess it can't hurt to have a security detail around the house, but perhaps the bathroom might be the one place we don't need an extra set of eyes. What? Okay, wait a second, guys. Oh. I think I lagged out somehow. Suit yourself, but if a dragon crawls up the pipes and toasts your rear ends, don't come crying to me, Puck said with a snort and headed back to his room. Daphne peered into the toilet. Could a dragon really fit in here? Granny Rhoda assured the little girl that her rear end was safe from dragon attacks. She praised Elvis for his bravery and scratched him behind his big ears, then encouraged everyone to go back to bed. We're going to visit Mr. Canis bright and early tomorrow, she reminded them. Another wasted trip, Sabrina thought to herself. Granny, with Elvis trotting behind her, returned to her room, leaving Sabrina and Daphne alone with their uncle. Have you been up all night? Daphne asked him. Uncle Jake rubbed his bloodshot eyes. Want to see where she is? Absolutely, Sabrina replied. The girls followed him back down the hall to the door to the spare bedroom. The room was sparsely furnished, with only a full-length mirror against the far wall and a queen-sized bed in the middle. Lying on the bed were Henry and Veronica Grimm, Sabrina and Daphne's parents, who were currently the victims of a spell that kept them sound asleep. Nothing Sabrina and her family had tried could wake them up. They were like two sleeping beauties. Only one of them needed a shave. Recently, there had been a glimmer of hope for the sleeping Grimms, a woman from Henry's past who might be able to right the family's tragedy. Uncle Jake had been keeping a close watch on her via one of the Grimm's most valuable magical possessions, a magic mirror. Mirror wasn't exactly the best word to describe what it was. Mirrors reflect back what is in front of them, but this mirror was reflecting something else, or rather somewhere else. Gazing into the silvery surface, Sabrina saw a beautiful curly-haired woman with a round face and green eyes. She had a splash of freckles on her button nose, and her blonde hair looked like precious gold against the bright blue sky. She was wearing a billowy white dress and sitting atop a camel. There were other people with her, each also on a camel. There were other people with her, each also on a camel, and they were snapping pictures of an ancient pyramid standing in a rocky desert. Goldilocks, Sabrina whispered to herself. It looks hot, Daphne said as she peered into the mirror. I think she's somewhere in Egypt. It's hard to tell exactly where, though. The place is overrun with pyramids, Uncle Jake said as he knocked on the edge of the mirror. If this thing had sound, I might be able to make out her tour guide's dialect. Last week, she was in the Serengeti. The week before, South Africa. Why does she keep moving around so much? Daphne said. Who knows? Sabrina complained. She's never in one place more than a few days, and then she's jetting off somewhere completely different. How are we going to get a message to her? She's got to come back here. She's got to help us wake up Mom and Dad. Daphne and Uncle Jake seemed taken aback by Sabrina's sudden temper, but she felt she had a right to be angry. At one time, their search to find a way to break the spell on her parents had seemed hopeless. Now that they knew this woman had a solution, it was almost harder than before, as they had to watch her dot around the world on a silly vacation. Be patient, Brina, Uncle Jake said to calm her. We'll track her down. As if on cue, the image faded in the mirror and in its place a fierce bulbous head appeared floating in the silver surface. He had strong features and thick lips, and his eyes were as black as midnight. Hello, Mirror, Sabrina said. Hello, girls, Mirror said. Could the two of you drag your uncle out of here? He's been lurking around this room for 2 weeks. He needs something to eat, and if you ask me, he's long overdue for a bath. He's right, Daphne said to her uncle. No offense, but you're all getting a little rank. Uncle Jake shrugged and threw up his hands in surrender. Fine, I can start up again in the morning. After a bath, Mirror repeated. Uncle Jake turned to the girls. You two should run off to bed as well. You've got a big day tomorrow. More sitting outside the jail, hoping they will let us in to see Mr. Canis, Sabrina muttered. It's a waste of time. The sheriff of Nottingham won't let us in. We could be using the time to find Goldilocks. You may not see Canis, but I'm sure he appreciates the effort, Sabrina. What if you gave up on the day Nottingham had a change of heart? You have to have a heart to change it, Sabrina grumbled. Are you coming with us? Daphne asked her uncle. Not this time, Peanut. I've got plans with Briar Rose. Another day of holding hands and smooching? Daphne asked. Uncle Jake smiled. If I play my cards right. Breakfast was never a pleasant experience for Sabrina. Granny Rhoda's cooking left a lot to be desired. Many of her signature dishes included roots and grubs, flowers and weeds, milk with unusual animals, and tree bark, all in heavy bubbling sauces. But that morning, her appetite was ruined not by her grandmother's culinary disasters, but by a pig-snouted creature sitting on the table like an ugly centerpiece. It had beady red eyes, enormous blisters all over its face, and a long blue forked tail it used to swat the flies that circled its melon-shaped head. I suppose you're part of the security team, Sabrina said to the creature. It nodded and puffed up its chest proudly. I'm a poison sniffer, I am. My job is to sniff out anything that might kill you before you put it into your gob, if it pleases you, miss. My gob? Your pie hole, your chowder box, your mouth, it said, as it wiped its runny nose on its hairy arm. I'm going to take a snort of every bite. Puck's orders. Lovely, Sabrina said sarcastically. Granny rushed into the room, carrying a sizzling pan and a spatula. She flipped something that looked like a pink burrito onto Sabrina's plate. What is this? Sabrina asked as she poked at her breakfast. She was sure that if she poked it hard enough, it would squeal. It's gristle and ham wrapped around heavy whipping cream. People love this in the Czech Republic, Granny said as she rushed back into the kitchen. People must be very unhappy in the Czech Republic if this is what they love to eat, Sabrina said. She leaned over to smell her breakfast, then eyed the ugly creature. I'll give you $5 if you tell my grandmother this is poisoned. The creature shook its head. I cannot be bought. Granny rushed back into the room with a pitcher and poured some glowing red juice into Sabrina's glass. Your sister has something planned for all of us, the old woman said, gesturing at Daphne's empty chair. She told me that today she is going to be a totally different person. She's going to start eating with a fork? Sabrina asked. Don't tease her. She's got it into her head that she needs to grow up. When she comes down, try to treat her like an adult, the widow said. Sabrina cocked an eyebrow. You're kidding me, right? Just then, Daphne stepped into the room. Sabrina turned to face her and nearly fell out of her chair. Gone were the goofy T-shirts covered with puppets and cartoons, the blue jean overalls, the mismatched socks. Daphne was wearing a blue dress Granny had bought Sabrina for special occasions. Her hair was combed straight rather than in her usual ratty pigtails, exactly the way Sabrina wore her own hair. Plus, the little girl was wearing lip gloss. She sat at the table, placed her napkin in her lap, and nodded at her sister and grandmother. I hope everyone slept well. It was several moments before Sabrina realized her jaw was hanging open. Is this some kind of joke? She cried. Daphne frowned, as did Granny Rhoda. Doesn't look like a joke, Daphne snapped, and did something that made Sabrina's blood boil. Daphne turned to her grandmother and rolled her eyes impatiently. How dare she? So, I hear we have some appointments this morning, Grandmother, Daphne said. Granny chuckled but managed not to burst into laughter. Yes, indeed. I needed two of you to hurry with breakfast. We're going downtown. How? Daphne said. Uncle Jacob is spending the day with Briar. Good question. We all know it's a federal offense for you to get behind the wheel of a car. And if you think we're getting into Rip Van Winkle's camp again, you've lost your mind. She shuddered, recalling the hair-raising ride with the narcoleptic taxi driver. Oh no, we're taking the flying carpet, Granny explained. Sweet, I call shotgun, Daphne cried, but then quickly controlled herself. I mean, that will be pleasant. Then it was Sabrina's turn to roll her eyes. After breakfast, Sabrina, Daphne, Granny Rhoda, and the odd fruit-tasting creature who insisted on coming along as protection sailed over Ferryport Landing aboard Aladdin's flying carpet. The carpet was just one of a number of magical items the family possessed. Sabrina's first experience riding the enchanted rug had nearly given her a heart attack, but Granny seemed to have more experience steering it, and the trip went without incident. Along the way, Sabrina gazed down the town. Everything was changing. Once thriving neighborhoods had been abandoned, and many homes were facing the wrecking ball. In their place, odd buildings were erected. Castles surrounded by alligator-infested moats, mansions made from gingerbread and candy, Mr. Applebee's farm. The site of their first detective case had been bought and converted into a gigantic chessboard reminiscent of Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. The changes made Sabrina uncomfortable. It reminded her that she and her family were the only humans left in town. Sabrina's world hadn't always been so bizarre. Long before magic mirrors, flying carpet rides, and toilet leprechauns, the Grimm sisters had lived normal, quiet lives in New York City. When their parents disappeared, they bounced from one foster family to the next, eventually landing in the home of their real-life grandmother, who lived in a sleepy river town called the Ferryport Landing. Sabrina remembered the day she and Daphne had come into town by train. Sabrina remembered the day she and Daphne came into town by train. Ferryport Landing seemed like the most boring place in the world, but it had a shocking secret. Ferryport Landing was a settlement with fairy tale characters founded by her great-great-great-great-great-grandfather Wilhelm Grimm, one of the world-famous brothers Grimm. Sabrina guessed that most kids would love living among their favorite fairy tale characters. Knowing Snow White lived down the street or that the Little Mermaid was swimming in the river might be a dream come true for some, but to Sabrina it was more like a nightmare. Most of the fairy tale folks, who now called themselves ever afters, despised her family. The root of their hatred lay with Wilhelm, who, with the help of the decrepit older witch named Baba Yaga, constructed a magical boundary. That seems to be the end of this video. I'll send you later. Goodbye.